So welcome everybody and welcome to the webinar of the month held by UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency. For some of you who may have participated in these webinars before, we conduct these webinars on a monthly basis to support potential applicants like you to better understand the recruitment process, demystify the selection process at international organizations, and provide you with resources on preparing for competency-based interviews, optimizing job applications, preparing for written technical assessments like the one today, and other presentations about how to join humanitarian actors from across the globe who work at this great organization that we are representing today, UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency. We have great participants today, and we're going to have them briefly introduce themselves and what they do here at the organization. And then we're going to get started because we do have a lot of content to cover. So let's move to Mariana first. Go ahead, Mariana.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marianna Torma, and I work in the talent development and performance section in UNHCR. And the unit I work for, talent planning and communication, is basically in charge of developing and delivering resources and material and webinars and workshops for internal audience, which are related to career development and career management. I am originally from Hungary, and I joined the organization in 2009. So I just celebrated my 13th birthday in June, and I'm very much looking forward to engaging with you today. So this is the job I enjoy doing. I love engaging with participants and giving them advice and information on how to manage their careers and how to be successful.
Thank you very much, Mariana. Now let's move to our next speaker, Nelly.
Hello everyone, my name is Nelly Hevesi. I'm Hungarian by nationality and I've been working as a human resources officer in the UNHCR Global Service Center in Budapest for the past 14 years. I very much look forward to having this webinar with all of you, as I'm sure you will find lots of useful tips and nuggets of wisdom about written tests for future use. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks again, Nelly. That's Nelly's second webinar with us. If you want to hear more from Nelly, you can certainly listen to other presentations we have. All you have to do is go to unhcr.org/careers and go to the application section to listen to other webinars that we have available. Now let's move on to Dora.
Hello, a warm welcome to all of our participants today. My name is Dora Csordas. I serve in the Partnerships and Outreach section of UNHCR, and this is my second year working in the UN system. My role is Global Talent Outreach. Before UNHCR, I actually had a career in the private sector, and my last role was being the head of country HI and communication services for an international biotech company. I'm very excited to be here with you today.
Very good. And for those of you who are active on LinkedIn, I highly recommend that you follow Dora. You see her last name in there, Cordas. I think it's pronounced Shordas. I hope I'm not butchering your name, Dora. Very good. And you can find lots of updates on everything that we're doing regarding outreach activities, resources, whether we are conducting online career fairs or in-person career fairs. And Dora can be a great point of contact for you to understand more about what it's like to work at the organization, the opportunities that we have available. So follow her on LinkedIn for more information. My name is Gustavo Araújo. I am the head of partnerships and outreach unit here based in Budapest, and it's a great pleasure being with you. Without further ado, I think it's important that we actually clarify a few things before we begin. This is a presentation on preparing for written technical assessments for jobs at UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency. So this is a presentation that has evidence-based best practices in preparing for recruitment processes across sectors. Following these presentations does not necessarily guarantee any outcome in hiring processes, whether at UNHCR or any other organization. This presentation is for information purposes only. Why? Our goal is to make sure that we demystify the recruitment process at our organization so that applicants like you feel more confident in applying, competing, and hopefully landing a job with us now or in the future, or even eventually in other organizations. So hopefully these resources will be useful to all of you. Dora can tell us a little more about what we're going to cover in the agenda today. Go ahead, Dora.
All right, let's see our agenda for today. We're going to cover the what, how, and why of written technical assessments. Then we're going to move on predicting potential questions from the job description. We're also going to be preparing to take a test with practical examples, and we're going to practice at the end. Let's also now jump right into the content to find out more about how UNHCR uses written technical assessment as part of its selection process. Please note that not all recruitment processes at UNHCR may require a written assessment at this point. However, we believe that providing potential applicants with this learning opportunity can be beneficial in case they encounter written assessments in the future, may it be at UNHCR or at any other international organization. And now we're going to hear more about what assessments at UNHCR look like.
Thanks, Dora. So before we go into what written assessments are, I would like to just give a bit of a hint of what they are not. Some of you might be associated with UNHCR already, or you work for an organization that is linked to UNHCR, and you might heard the word functional assessment or functional clearance. So just a disclaimer at the beginning, we are not going to talk about functional clearance and functional assessment because that is done by the divisions. So today's we will focus on written tests, the tests that are used by the hiring managers as a tool in the selection process. And the outcome of a written test can have a direct impact on the overall results of your application. So regardless of the specifics of the job you are interviewing for, a written test can be very important. And knowing how to perform well on a written test is a valuable skill, but it will also require a lot of research and practice. In general, the purpose of a written test is to assess the applicant's skills, abilities, and knowledge on various matters that are directly linked to the job opening. And the format of the test will depend on the type of job that you have applied for, and also the skills that the manager would like to assess. In most of the situations, the applicants will receive a brief summary of the tasks and will have a set amount to complete these tests. How do we use written assessments? As we mentioned, written assessments are one of the many stages in the recruitment process, and they are used to ensure that the recruiter has the ability to collect multiple pieces of evidence of fit from the applicants. And the tests are rated anonymously by a group of experts or a group of panel members. We do make differentiation between two major types of written tests. One would be the eliminatory assessment, and the idea behind the eliminatory assessment is to decide whether or not the applicant meets the minimum requirements to move forward to the next stage in the screening process. And then the other type of assessment is, we so call it complementary. So that means that those of you who are invited for an interview will also be invited to sit a test, and the scores will be compared against one another and also combined with the interview performance outcome to ensure that the best fit will get the job opening. We mentioned the interview, and besides the tests, many organizations now use the competency-based interviews to identify the best fit for positions, like UNHCR. So in UNHCR, we also use the competency-based interviewing. And as Dora mentioned, the use of written tests is not mandatory. It's an optional tool to be used by the hiring managers. The only regulation would be that if they decide to to do or facilitate a written test, they should invite everyone on that to take that test, whoever they include in their initial shortlist. And then they can use the results both eliminatory or complementary to the interview results.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mariana. Why are written technical assessments used? Mariana has alluded to that regarding collecting information from applicants. So written technical assessments offer a very important metric to be added to many other pieces of information we collect on applicants like you. So given the high number of applications we receive, it's really important that we ensure that only those who are best qualified and with the depth and breadth of technical knowledge needed are hired to support and provide assistance to our persons of concern. Let's not forget that a lot of people apply for positions at the UN system. If you want to understand how to best approach applying for positions at UNHCR, I highly recommend you watch the webinar titled Optimizing Job Applications for Jobs at UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, where we actually talk about the importance of going beyond the minimum requirements, because minimum requirements are simply minimum requirements, and a big percentage of applicants meet these minimum requirements. So what do you do to stand out in the process? What do you do to ensure that you get recruiters' eyes on your application as well as hiring managers? If you want to hear tips about that, again, go to unhcr.org/careers and go to the application section for more information. Our experience has shown that although written tests are not mandatory in UNHCR recruitment processes, they have become more used widely. So it's very likely that an external applicant eventually will be invited to one should they make it through the screening stage. When it comes to the various methodologies that we use, written assessments, similar to work sample tests, are one of the high validity processes and methods that we use to try and predict who might be a better fit for the position. So as you can see, in terms of predictive validity, other than assessment centers, we have structured behavioral interviews such as competency-based interviews. We also have work samples, which are similar to written assessments to some extent. So you can see that there are lots of different ways that we can collect information from applicants. There is no 100% way to confirm to predict success, but we add them up and we get as much information as possible to ensure that we can make the best decision. But one question that you may ask is, how do you prepare for those, right? Or what are those written tests typically like at UNHCR? And Nelly's going to continue this conversation with us.
Okay, thank you, Gustavo. So you may be wondering what technical assessments typically look like at UNHCR, and we will see it in the next slides. While these represent the most typical cases, please note that hiring managers and local HR practitioners may deviate from these criteria in order to better serve the purposes of the recruitment process. Typically, the written assessments take place before or on the same day as the interviews. They may take place before in case they are eliminatory, and as Mariana already described for you, it means that only those who pass the test will be invited to continue in the selection process. In case of complementary written technical tests, they may take place on the same day, so scores can be compared against other pieces of data obtained during the competency-based interviews. On average, these tests may take between 1 to 2 hours, and applicants are asked to respond to 3 to 4 questions in general. We will be covering the potential types of questions later in this presentation. And now let's find out what happens after you take the test. So after you take the test, typically 3, but at least 2 raters who are part of the interview process will use a pre-made marking guide to score the assessments. And this is to ensure that we follow a systematic approach to grading applicants' responses. However, a recruiter will anonymize all tests in advance, and Mariana already referred to this. And they will remove any information that may indicate who the applicant is. When taking the test, in fact, you will also be asked to refrain from adding identifying information. So the raters mark all responses blindly. And this is done to decrease potential for bias. Tests are typically taken online within a limited window of time. Now that you know what happens after the test, we will move on to the most important part of this presentation, which is helping you prepare. And Dora will walk us through the basic preparation steps.
Right, so first of all, I'm going to share quite a bit of information with this slide. So just 2 notes right there. Not all types of written tests I'm going to talk about are necessarily part of UNHCR written assessments. And 2, nevertheless, this is very, very useful information for you. So bear with me as I'm explaining about different types of written tests. So there are several types of written tests that may be used during a job interview. And some of them are the aptitude test. What is an aptitude test? They are standardized and they aim to assess the applicant's various aptitudes and general behavior when compared to normal parameters for people within the same age group and experience level. They evaluate the applicant's abilities for a specific set of tasks related to the job they are applying for. Questions in this kind of test usually involve testing their abstract reasoning, memory, verbal numerical literacy, perception of space and time, as well as attention and other similar traits. The second group of written tests are the tests that measure competencies. What are these competencies? A few examples would be communication skills tests. Written tests are often used in job interviews as a way of testing the applicant's communication skills. Depending on the role you are applying for and the interviewer's preferences, the communication skills written test usually consists of writing a simple letter, essay, or even a press release. The employer typically analyzes the content for grammar, punctuation, and how relevant and knowledgeable it is. Then we have the creative thinking test. What are these kind of tests? So they typically consist of questions regarding previous work situations in which the applicant had to use their creativity to resolve various issues or to find new ways of performing a task. This type of test can give the hiring manager an insight into how the applicant may handle unexpected work issues. Moving on to problem-solving tests. These tests aim to measure an applicant's problem-solving skills, obviously. They typically involve a problem that is related to the job that they are applying for. And aside from asking the applicant how they would approach and solve the respective problem, the test typically also asks them to explain their reasoning behind and what they would do to prevent the issue from happening again in the future. Next example in this set would be analytical thinking. Tests can aim to measure a candidate's comprehension skills and their ability to identify key information, apply logic, and find patterns. There are more examples, but we're not gonna delve into more. Rather, I would like to mention another group of type of written tests, which are the so-called hard skills assessment. And these hard skill assessments are specific written tests which are solely related to the skills and knowledge that are required to perform the job the applicant is applying for. They typically consist of practical exercises that measure the applicant's ability to complete frequently performed work activities. On to Mariana.
Thanks, I just forgot to unmute myself. So in the next part of the presentation, we will walk you through the preparation steps prior to taking a written assessment. And for this preparation, there will be two important documents that you will need to study quite well. One of them is the job description or terms of reference. We call it job description in UNHCR, and there we usually have standard job descriptions. So that would mean that, for example, for a child protection officer role in the Americas, the job description will be the same as for a child protection role in Asia. And then the second document that comes on top of the job description is called the operational context, and that will have basically the information and requirements that is tailored to the certain operation and the certain context. So the job description and the operational context will be very important in the preparation. And a lot of applicants believe that just because they meet or surpass the minimum criteria for a job opening, they are already competitive for a position. But unfortunately, that's not the case because we do have a lot of competition. Therefore, it is very important that you prepare and perform well on a written test as well as the interview. We will go into details on what kind of questions you might meet during these written tests, and these type of questions or the indications can help you prepare as well. Please note that the types of questions presented here will not be exhaustive, and you might find other types of questions and assessments when participating in one of our recruitment processes. But I pass over to Nelly to take you into details.
So the typical types of questions will vary depending on the type of position you are applying for. For example, for regional or political assessments, maybe one type of questions asked for individual working in the area of protection or inter-agency coordination, whereas financial data analysis may be asked of individuals applying for positions such as finance officer or for budgeting, reporting, as well as those with the supervisory duties of programs of offices. Case studies may be asked to gauge your experience handling complex situations, particularly in the field, and we will provide you with some examples soon. Scenario analysis may be similar to case studies, but much briefer in its description and data provided, whereas reports or project concept analysis may be the type of questions asked to individuals applying for positions in information management or reporting. Last but not least, data on an area of expertise relevant to the position may be presented for you to make an assessment and inferences. We will provide more details next.
Right, and allow me just to chime in with, again, reiterating our very important technical notice that this above list that Nelly shared was by no means an exhaustive list of types of questions. And you can find potentially other types of assessments at UNHCR or at other organizations. Our goal simply is to provide you information on the most common types that you can get a feel of them and feel a bit more comfortable in the process. Now back to Nelly.
Thank you, Dora. So regarding regional or political assessments, it may sound a little bit like the following. Given your understanding of the local situation, how do you approach X, Y, and Z? How does the current situation, historical data, or trends for the future affect your analysis? What are the typical challenges experienced by the incumbent given the local context? How should or how does the organization approach such issues? However, financial data analysis may sound as follows. As per the job description, what is the financial knowledge needed to succeed in this position? Are other components, such as budgeting and monitoring, part of the equation? What types of analysis is the incumbent expected to conduct, and via which methods? Report or project concept analysis questions give you the opportunity to provide evidence of your expertise.
I think we may have a
yes,
case study first with Mariana, if that's okay, Nelly. So Mariana, let's go back to you very soon. But before we start with Mariana, when it comes to the finance analysis questions, obviously there might be some exercises in which you have to run numbers in Excel spreadsheets or programs. What we're doing here is giving you a flavor of how you can prepare by looking at the job description and asking yourselves these questions, right? So please focus on that. And now let's move back to the case studies. Go ahead, Mariana.
Thanks. So case studies, Nelly already mentioned, they tend to be a bit more complex and present a large number of material and pieces of information and data. For some case studies, you might even be provided with an extract of the policies or regulations, which you will need to take into consideration when you provide your answers. And the goal of the recruiter or the assessment here is not only to ascertain that you have the technical knowledge necessary to perform well on the job, but also to judge other abilities that can come through your assessment. For example, how you prioritize time or how you analyze the number of information or the amount of information that you received. So as Gustavo said, what would be the typical questions that can come to mind? In a typical situation experienced by the incumbent of the position, what are the factors that you should consider? Why are they relevant? How do you use your previous experience and knowledge to justify decisions that you make? And given your experience in similar situations and the amount of data provided, what your recommendations would be and why are these recommendations?
Very good. Mariana, go ahead with scenario.
Yes, and then scenario analysis, very similar to a case study, but Nelly mentioned that it's less number or less amount of information that you receive. So it's a bit of a more brief description and a lot shorter in length. And the quality and quantity of information is also less than in case studies. But scenario analysis serves to assess your overall judgment in typical situations involved in the day-to-day activities of the position. And it's important that you answer these types of questions based on your understanding of the operational context and the job description. So therefore, important that you study these in advance, as well as a combination of your past experiences. So typical questions to think about. What types of scenarios, complex situations, and engagements do you anticipate in the position? What types of data would be important to consider in these circumstances and why? What other aspects of working in an international environment can be considered? Or given your experiences, what have you identified as top priorities in handling potential similar scenarios in the position?
That's a great point, and one thing to emphasize again, and that's why and how a lot of individuals who apply for positions in international civil service sector get a little confused about the fact why they may not be called into the recruitment process if they meet the minimum requirements. Again, meeting the minimum requirements only does not indicate that you would be able to ask yourself the questions that are relevant to the position. So beyond going through the minimum requirements, going through the roles and responsibilities or tasks and responsibilities or duties and responsibilities of the job descriptions, you should go line by line and ask yourself the questions associated to that. And only then you will be able to make a decision of whether or not you should be applying for that position, not just based on the minimum requirements being met. Let's now go back to Nelly, who will talk about report and project concept analysis.
Thank you. I was very eager to jump onto this type of test. Basically, report or project concept analysis questions give you the opportunity to provide evidence of your expertise by identifying key areas to be tackled when running projects or writing reports. It requires that you demonstrate understanding of stakeholder management, milestones, interdependencies, and potential synergies. And just to show you some examples for questions, given the position, what types of projects is the incumbent expected to run or support? Or based on these types of projects, what types of information are needed? Who are the typical stakeholders? Which areas are you most familiar with in terms of these projects? For example, procurement, logistics, HR, or finance. How do you expect the incumbent to address the above areas? And as for data analysis, most positions require a certain level of understanding of data and the impact they have on decision making or informing stakeholders of risks and opportunities. We recommend that you engage in the following when looking at the duties and responsibilities of the job description. Ask yourself the following questions. What type of data analysis is required by the position? What types of data must the incumbent manage or analyze? And what types of reports does the incumbent need to write or understand?
All right, so one important thing for you to consider is what is the goal of the raters when they are assessing your written assessment, technical assessment. Again, let's repeat that these are typically conducted online and these are anonymized. What does it mean? You are issued a code, only one person is aware of who you are, and by the time the raters receive your written test, the person doesn't know your nationality or first language or gender or where you've worked or anything about your previous experiences. And instructions on those written tests typically indicate that you should refrain from adding any information that may make you easily identifiable by a rater, meaning that recruiters are also asked to anonymize information such as when people directly refer to a specific agency or a specific project that may make them easily identifiable by one of the raters who might happen to be one of the board members participating in the interview. The goal is to assess your depth and breadth of knowledge or an acumen to deal with similar situations based on your responses. So this is the goal of the raters. Your goal is to ensure that you understand the competencies and technical knowledge required by the job so you can make a case that you are indeed a good fit for the position. What does it mean in practice exactly? Now we're going to take a look at two sections of a job description, the part for duties and responsibilities under a very typical position at UNHCR, a P2 Associate Protection Officer job description. Okay, so this will be our practice time. Before we start on the practice, I would like Dora to tell us a little bit about some preparation steps you need to engage before we do this exercise.
Yeah, so I really would like to ask you to listen well to this section because so far we have seen what written tests are, what main types of written tests exist out there, and we've seen a whole awful lot of typical questions with the certain types. So really what we would like to achieve is that you never again have to walk into a written test feeling nervous, not knowing what to expect, because now you will be equipped with the knowledge exactly how to prepare. And even if the kind of written test you are sitting for is not in the same field we are covering, or it's not the same type. Nevertheless, the tool I'm gonna tell you now and we're gonna see practical example of will equip you with a calm strategy how to prepare yourself to any sort of jobs with an assessment. Okay, so let's do this. For starters, the first step is to review the job description or terms of reference with a focus on the operational context, and Gustavo and Mariana had alluded to this already a couple of times. As we have said, many applicants wrongfully believe that just because they meet or even surpass the minimum requirements that they are competitive for a position, but I'm sorry to say it's not the case. Then, upon reviewing the duties and responsibilities, engage yourself in an exercise and extricate relevant competencies, and even for yourself, create potential questions. And this is how you can customize this little template of a preparation exercise to any kind of job that might be out there. But we will also engage with you in an exercise to create these questions today, just to, to show you how it's done through a specific example. And then last but not least, please think of relevant and genuine examples to take into account the complexity and the level of the position that you are applying for. Now, if you are ready, then let's jump into the exercise with Gustavo.
Very good. Thank you very much, Dora. And these steps are very similar to the steps that you may engage in when preparing for competency-based interviews. Again, if you're interested in learning more about these resources, go to unhcr.org/careers and go to the application section where you're going to find our current webinars available. Here we have a duty and responsibility for a P2 Associate Protection Officer, okay? Facilitate national solutions for those identified as stateless through partnership and advocacy with the authorities, and assist individuals confirm nationality on a case-by-case basis through obtaining the necessary documentation, right? If you are familiar with some competencies associated to performing jobs, you may think that in order for people to be successful in these kinds of tasks, the individuals may have to engage with like communication skills or stakeholder management or planning in advance, right? These are the broad communication planning, organization types of competencies associated at the higher level. When it comes to the duties and responsibilities, we're getting more granular. And that's where you need to go, getting granular to the level of what are the tasks that you get engaged in on a day-to-day basis. So thinking about specific competencies that could be related to that and thinking about a specific task and responsibility, look at these specific tasks here. Provide capacity building of government officials and civil society actors on the topics of asylum and statelessness. What I'd like for you to do now is to think about one or two competencies that you may associate with this task. Again, read the task again and think about one or two competencies that you may find relevant at the broader level associated to this task. Provide capacity building of government officials and civil society actors on the topics of asylum and statelessness. Would anybody want to take a try and enter in the chat box one particular competency they can think of? Professionalism, communication, very good. Anything else? Communication is popping up a lot. Diplomacy, okay. Anything else? Legal competencies, trainer experience, you're hitting the ballpark there, right? So we're going from the broad. Now let's look at the next piece of information here. Now let's think about a potential question, okay? When you have a task such as provide capacity building of government officials and civil society actors on topics of asylum and statelessness, what could be a potential question to be asked in a written assessment? And there you go. Dora, would you mind reading the question for me so it's not just me talking?
With pleasure. So, potential questions. What are the key elements to be considered when conducting capacity building activities? Which stakeholders should be engaged and why? What are the sources of information on content?
Correct. So in those cases, just like as you are preparing for a competency-based interview, when you are answering questions for a written technical assessment, you have to think about the what, the how, the why, for whom, to whom, when, and where, so that you can give enough details. If you don't have enough experiences to answer these questions, it's likely they may not be necessarily the right fit for the position. So your job is to inform the stakeholders that you have relevant transferable skills and relevant experiences. And if you don't have relevant transferable skills and experiences associated to that, maybe you may not be the best fit for the position. So your job is to gain the experiences in advance by taking lateral types of positions or going to lower level positions or getting experiences in other areas that could be of relevance to the job that you want to take in the future. Okay, let's take a look at another example as well. And now we're going to take a look at a specific scenario. And this is a very brief scenario. Okay, Dora, would you mind reading the task and responsibility for me?
Okay, here we go. Assist in the implementation of registration, enrollment, and digital identity strategies for populations of concern in compliance with global and regional protection and inclusion objectives and priorities, ensuring that relevant standards are met and appropriate methodologies and technologies are implemented.
This is a mouthful, so let's give you 15 seconds for you to read again. 15 seconds. Now 15 seconds are over, and this comes from a real task and responsibility from an associate registration officer this time. A potential scenario may read like this. You have been tasked with the implementation of a registration program in Area X. Briefly describe important factors related to the development of this program. Again, how, why, what, for whom, to whom, when, where. Please address enrollment and digital identity strategies you would use, as well as methodologies and technologies to be implemented. You see how this potential scenario with a question is very much aligned to the task and responsibility. So when you think about the competencies that may be assessed at a job interview or at a written assessment, first you start at the top. It may be communication, it may be organization, it may be professionalism, it may be all of them. Then what do? You look at the operational context to understand exactly what may be needed in that particular context. And you dissect the information from the job description, from the tasks and responsibilities associated to it, and you can try and identify potential questions that will come up as you are preparing for this written test or competency-based interview. Let's go back again to reviewing the preparation steps with Dora.
And just before that, just a technical guidance. If you are looking for the operational context on our career page, when you open a certain job description, it's usually at the top right corner, a little gray button saying operational context. You click on it and it opens up, and then you can utilize the information in it. Or sometimes it's right at the end of the job description, but always look for it. Okay, back to the slide. So once you identified potential questions, you can then focus on brushing up on your technical knowledge. And I'll tell you why in a bit. So it's also important that you are aware of the new trends and developments in the particular function. And just to give you a couple of examples, keeping in mind that depending on the grade of the position, the seniority level of the position, these might differ. Say for protection functions, we have seen durable solutions and development are becoming increasingly important. For human resources roles, you will need to demonstrate knowledge of strategic workforce planning, people management, employee engagement, and talent development. Innovation is becoming another key for functions like risk management, executive management, and data management. And so why did I say that it's good to brush up on your technical skills and being aware of the new trends and developments? Because historical data shows that UNHCR tends to recruit for roles where internal talent is not readily available. So that's where external applicants like yourself come into play. So these kind of roles will most likely require the mentioned up-to-date functional knowledge. So here you can be of advantage when applying to the position.
Very good. Just one caveat to say here too. We are about 18,000 people, approximately 13,000 staff members, and around 4,500 affiliate workforce, including consultants, individual contractors. UNHCR is a career organization for those that have staff positions, also meaning that those with international professional positions are required to rotate across the globe and develop careers and given opportunities, and folks may be able to move laterally upwards or even downwards should they want to. Obviously, our goal is to ensure that our internal staff can leverage these opportunities. And in the event that it is harder to find specific types of talents, or there's greater need for new individuals to join the organization, we also will advertise the positions externally more and more over time, in which internal applicants may compete with external applicants. And at this point, we do give due consideration to internal applicants as well. Right, so this is really important for those of you who may already be working at UNHCR, and that's why all of you, whether you don't work at UNHCR, you can find resources to prepare for these recruitment processes via unhcr.org/careers. And if you are a UNHCR employee, you can simply go to Learn and Connect, and you can find a lot of career management and career development tools to help you and support you in preparing for recruitment processes inside the organization. So just moving on to the next section again with Dora, looking at a recruiter's perspective.
Right, so we went through theory, we went through practical examples, and before we round up our presentation for the day, another perspective I would like to share with you is the recruiter's one. It's a little behind the scenes speak, if you will. This is how recruiter will perceive your written assessment and you as a candidate. We're going to move from left to right, obviously from the zone that we would like to avoid, from the not selected option to the ideal candidate towards the selected option. So let's see, this is what you need to be adapt to. The the hopefully to be avoided scenario would be when the candidate doesn't have the relevant experience upon which to draw, or their experience and behavior doesn't align with UNHCR's requirements. Now, a little better than that would be if the candidate does have relevant experience, but they choose wrong examples to illustrate it through the various types of written questions that may receive. Very trivial things can come into play here, which make or break your case. For example, a candidate might not read the question thoroughly. It can happen all the time. We have seen that questions might be quite lengthy. So I would advise to always very calmly take the time to internalize and to really understand what's written in the question. It doesn't take away from your time of answering, but it's a good investment of that couple extra seconds or even a minute so that you can give a relevant answer. So many times candidates don't consider why the question is being asked or don't think of a good example. Moving on towards the more optimal end of this scale is when our candidate has relevant experience and also selects a good example, but unfortunately cannot externalize, communicate well the information So we always say it's not enough to have what it takes, but we also need to showcase it um, because a lot of applicants might be on the same level or even not that experienced, but maybe they can communicate what they have better. So it's also part of the equation. What you should, pay attention here is really take the opportunity to, so to speak, sell yourself, showcase what you have, and please don't think that attaching your CV is enough. Please take the effort and show that you really have what it takes. Also, sometimes people write too little or too much of irrelevant information. That's also not a good choice. Again, it's important to build up examples in a logical, concise manner. And Gustavo has alluded to other resources on our website. So our previous webinar was exactly about the competency-based interviews, how to prepare for them. And if you missed it, that you can find it on our website, the recording, but in there, we shared with you a method which is called a STAR method. And it's really a wonderful way to logically and concisely showcase your skill and to illustrate your skill for a question that you may get. So please go and check out that webinar because it's also applicable not just for oral interviews, but also for written assessments. And probably needless to say, but I will say it because we've seen, unfortunately, very good candidates slip up on this one, use correct grammar and business appropriate language. It will serve you well. And in the end, the ideal candidate would be someone who has relevant experience, selects good examples, communicates it well. So it's really a constellation of all these elements that I have mentioned before.
Very good. Thank you very much, Dora. We are getting close to the end of the presentation. So just a reminder that those written assessments can be a very important component of any recruitment process. So preparation, especially in understanding the purpose of the position you're applying for in the context of the organization, as well as mapping how your skills, abilities, and technical knowledge needed to perform well will be essential to make you feeling comfortable in the selection process. Another important thing to remember is that interviewers or test raters are not there to see anybody fail, right? They're cheering for you to put your best foot forward. So ideally for our positions, we want all applicants to do well. So we have plenty of choices of qualified individuals to join our teams across the globe. So as previously discussed, not all recruitment processes at UNHCR may require a written assessment. However, we felt that offering you this opportunity can ensure you that you better understand the process and the system and that you feel more comfortable in case you ever find a written assessment on your path, whether UNHCR or other UN organization. Let's move on with some final words with Dora.
Yeah, so I think ad nauseum we have repeated, please visit our career site, but it's just such a good career page with so much useful information. And if you click on the application and selection tab, if you scroll down to the bottom of that page, you will find the recordings of all our previous webinars. We mentioned we have one on optimizing your job application, preparing for interviews, but you have much more there as well. And we will upload today's webinar shortly. So if you would like to, stop it and take notes, you can find it there as well hopefully in a couple of days. And we have a lot of other tools that can help you in your application and just to learn about our values of diversity and inclusion, reading interviews with our staff members just to see what it's like to work for UNHCR.
Very good. Now we are at the Q&A session of the presentation. We'll dedicate about 7 to 10 minutes, and I'm very glad that Nelly and Mariana are here to help answer our questions as well. We are going to try and answer as many generic questions as possible to help as many people as possible, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'll try and identify some of the questions that have been asked before, and you can enter your new questions now. So we have a question here on, can a written test and competency-based interview be mixed in one job opening assessment? Dora, would you want to take that? Do we do both?
Well, I think you should be prepared to do both because sometimes it is both. Sometimes recruiters need to use both tools to be best and in the most fair manner determine who is the best candidate. Having said that, sometimes we only just have an interview. It can depend on the job itself, but it's better to be prepared for both, I would say.
Correct. Very good. Someone also is asking about the website. It seems like we've had some issues with our current website, but look forward to a very new recruitment platform, which we are expected to release in October 2022. So hang in there a few more months. In the meantime, we kindly ask for your patience in continuing applying. A little trick for those of you who may be watching this presentation before we switch to a new recruitment platform in October is try and clean your cache when you are using the browser, or try and change into a different browser. Instead of using Firefox, try Chrome. Instead of Chrome, try something else, because sometimes it's just a IT issue. Okay, let me
So if I
see.
may just interject here, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Please always save what you have entered so far. So always like regularly save your draft because it will save save you a lot of time and headache. So if you save it, it's gonna be there for you for later. Don't lose
Correct.
your hard work.
Another
And
question I have. Go ahead, Nelly. Go ahead, please.
sorry, just one more tip for this because we're having the same questions. We received the same questions for local positions in Budapest. And my I think my most important advice is that don't leave it for the last day. Because
Mhm.
if you have technical problems, it sometimes the system is down, sometimes you have problems with emptying the cache, or other types of problems may come up. Sometimes you need to just do a new registration and then submit your application. Don't leave it to the last minute, and not even to the last day. Do it as soon as possible, and then you have a peace of mind to clear any technical problems that may come up.
Okay, many
Thank you.
thanks for that. A question that I have that maybe Dora could answer: will the written assessment be used for talent pool candidates?
That's a very good question. And for those of you who don't know what a talent pool is, you can apply to our talent pools. It's an open call for application. They are built around different job functions. You can find a dedicated sub-page in our career page for talent pools. Candidates are typically recruited for temporary appointments from talent pools. So yes and no. Some of the talent pools require a written assessment, and it's always with the technical team. As Mariana said in the beginning, this webinar is more about preparing for written assessments for jobs, whereas the technical written assessments for talent pools are done by the division of the pertaining talent pool, and so they decide if they need a test or some certificates, or even looking through your CV is enough for them. It varies from talent pool to talent pool.
Another question is regarding the status of applications. With the new um, recruitment process, it will be easier regarding status updates that you can actually check in the system. You can check in this one as well, but I think the communication will be a lot easier. So we kindly ask for your patience as well as we improve the status of the new recruitment platform so we can provide you with better services. When it comes to hearing back, I would say that typically the process may run, depending on the position, between 3 to 6 months, sometimes slightly longer. And you also need to be mindful about the how much time has passed after the deadline for application. And individuals may be called, but only those who are called for the steps will be contacted. Typically, we have to give notice of applications being unsuccessful at the very end of the process as well. Okay, we do need to get moving right now. So unfortunately, we do need to finalize the presentation, but we would like to thank you very much for your interest in UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency. We very much encourage you to continue following the organization on social media, especially on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We do have a Twitter careers account. UNHCR careers account that you can find some more tips and also a vacancies as well. And please follow our recruiters, including Dora, so you can get updates. Any last words from you from our speakers before we finish? Let's go with Nelly.
I just want to thank you for all the questions, and I know we couldn't answer all of them, but maybe if you watch some of the other webinars from before, you will find some answers, definitely. And thanks a lot for your attention.
Mariana.
Thank you for participating and looking forward to seeing you as a future colleague.
It's a very nice thing to say, Mariana. Very nice. Dora.
Yes, it's always such a pleasure to be part of these webinars, and I would like to congratulate to all of you who entered your answers at the exercise Gustavo ran, because those were very good answers. So I am very hopeful for you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time.
Again, find us on social media and also visit unhcr.org/careers for more resources. And thank you very much for your interest in UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency. And goodbye and great day from Budapest.
Have a good day. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.